Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I've got 16 articles for you this morning. All the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. I'm going to attempt to load these up a little bit differently this morning in order to maybe help the hamster a little bit. I don't know. We'll see if this works any better. Maybe there won't be as many pauses. The first article that I have for you here is off of the WashingtonPost.com, and it says police say 6 people slain in terrorist incidents on London Bridge and nearby market. This is an update to the breaking story that I gave you earlier. I won't go through all this because there's a lot of duplicate in it from what I did earlier, but it says the van driving at high speed mowed down pedestrians on London Bridge late Saturday night before occupants got out and began stabbing patrons at a nearby bar and restaurant. Witnesses said in an attack that took, Witnesses said in an attack that police described as the latest in a string of deadly terrorist strikes to hit Britain this spring. Witnesses described the rampage that left a trail of bloodied bodies on a bridge and in an adjacent borough market, both of which are London landmarks. The low-tech but high-profile attack will raise questions about how British security services failed to stop yet another mass casualty strike after years of thwarting such attempts. Police said in a 4 a.m. news conference on Sunday that 6 people have been killed and that officers had shot dead the 3 attackers. London Ambulance Service tweeted in a statement saying it had taken at least 20 patients to 6 hospitals across London. The attack set off scenes of panic in the heart of London on a cool June evening as the city's streets were filled with people heading home from dinner or out for a drink. So the article goes on and talks about the people that were slashed up in the pubs and all that. If you want to read the rest of that, you can pull it up and read that for yourself. The next article is off of Newsmax, and it says UN slaps sanctions on North Koreans amid U.S. warnings. UN Security Council on Friday imposed sanctions on 18 North Korean officials and entities as the United States vowed to respond to Pyongyang's missile and nuclear test through other means if necessary. The council unanimously adopted a U.S. drafted resolution that put North Korea's suspected spy chief, 13 other officials, and 4 entities on the UN sanctions blacklist, hitting them with global travel ban and an assets freeze. The Security Council is sending a clear message to North Korea today: stop firing ballistic missiles or face the consequences, U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley told the Council. Beyond diplomatic and financial consequences, the U.S. Remains prepared to counteract North Korean aggression through other means if necessary, she added. China, Pyongyang's ally, backed the sanctions but renewed its appeal for dialogue to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula. Chinese Ambassador Liu Jai described current tensions as complex and sensitive, but added that there was a critical window of opportunity to return to the right track of seeking a settlement through dialogue and negotiations. It is incumbent on all parties concerned to exercise restraint and do more to ease tension and build mutual trust instead of the contrary, Liu added. Among those added to the sanctions blacklist are Cho Il-yu, believed to be the head of foreign espionage for Kim Jong-un's regime. The other 13 included senior officials from North Korea's Workers' Party and heads of trading firms tasked with securing purchases for Pyongyang's military programs. The strategic rocket forces of the North Korean army, 2 trading firms, and the Koryo Bank, linked to a party office that manages Kim's finances, were also hit by an assets freeze. The resolution, however, did not contain some of the biting sanctions the U.S. administration had floated last month, such as oil embargo, a ban on maritime shipping, trade restrictions, and curbs on North Korean workers abroad. The 18 names will be added to the current blacklist of 39 individuals and 42 North Korean entities already under UN sanctions. North Korea has carried out 2 atomic tests and dozens of missile launches since the beginning of last year in its quest to develop a missile capable of delivering a nuclear warhead to the continental United States. For weeks, the United States has been negotiating with China on new measures to ratchet up the pressure on North Korea, but Beijing has insisted on the need to open up dialogue. The United States has said it's willing to talk to North Korea if it halts its missile and nuclear tests. French Ambassador Francois Delatar said the resolution served as a warning to North Korea of tougher sanctions to come unless it changes course and halts its tests. If it continues on this dangerous path, we will have no other choice but to reinforce the pressure again and again, Delatar said. The Security Council adopted 2 sanction resolutions last year to ramp up pressure on Pyongyang and deny Kim the hard currency needed to fund his military programs. Those resolutions provided for significant curbs on North Korea's coal imports, a major source of revenue, restrictions on banking, and mandatory searches of all cargo to and from North Korea. The latest resolution condemned in the strongest terms North Korea's missile and nuclear weapons activities and demanded that Pyongyang abandon all of its military programs. Russia decided to support the measure despite Kremlin anger over Washington's move to impose U.S. sanctions on 2 Russian firms that do business with North Korea. The next article is off of Newsmax, and it says EPA head Pruitt on Paris pullout, U.S. leading with action, not words. The head of the EPA defended President Donald Trump's move to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement Friday, calling it a courageous decision that took all sides of the issue into consideration. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt told the White House press corps the U.S. has already reduced its carbon footprint to the 1990s level, noting that the nation has led by example. We have taken significant steps to reduce our CO2 footprint, Pruitt said. We are leading with action, not words. Paris, at its core, was a bunch of words committed to minimal environmental benefit and cost the country a substantial amount of money and put us at an economic disadvantage. Pruitt was asked multiple times during his brief appearance in the White House briefing room if Trump believes in climate change or if he thinks it's a hoax, which he has alluded to in the past. He declined to answer the question directly, saying that the discussion the president had with his team did not revolve around personal beliefs. All of the discussions were focused on one single issue. Is Paris good or not good for this country? That's the focus, Pruitt said. And the focus remained on whether Paris put us at an economic disadvantage. It was a failed deal to begin with, and even if all targets are met by the nations on the globe, it was reducing temperature 0.2 of 1 degree. That's what the president focused on. Pruitt was later asked if he himself believed climate change was real, to which he replied, I indicated during my confirmation hearings that, in fact, global warming is occurring, that human activity contributes in some manner, and measuring with precision the degree of human contribution is challenging. During the briefing, both Pruitt and the White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer reiterated Trump's desire to either renegotiate Americans' place in the Paris Agreement or put together a new deal. The president believes that it is in our country's best interest to renegotiate the deal, Spicer said. Now, let's get the next article up here. Okay, this one is off of BizPack Review. And it says, remember when Father of Climate Change called the Paris Agreement a giant fraud? Twitter sure does. By many to be the father of climate change, thinks the Paris Climate Agreement is bullshit. Back in 2015, former NASA scientist James Hansen was of the deal that has liberals flipping out since President Donald Trump pulled out of the deal on Thursday. It's a fraud, really, a fake, he told The Guardian on December the 12th of 2015, the same day the accord was adopted. For them to say we'll have a 2 centigrade warming target and then try to do a little better every 5 years. It's just worthless words. There's no action, just promises. As long as fossil fuels appear to be the cheapest fuels out there, they will be continued to be burned. Scientists are trained to be objective, he said. I don't think we should be prevented from talking about the implications of science. Hansen is still a global warming alarmist and fears the sea levels will rise, but even he thought the Paris Agreement had little to do with helping the climate. Many on social media made a point to remind people of Hansen's argument on Friday. I'll read you one here. It says, "Remember this, you bunch of lib hysterics? James Hansen, father of climate change awareness, calls Paris talks a fraud." And there's a whole list of other comments to that ilk if you want to pull it up and read that for yourself. The next one is off of Liberty Writers, and it says, "Come and get me." Nigel Farage's reaction to being connected to Russia's investigation will make Democrats' heads blow. Nigel Farage is a conservative member of the British Parliament and was one of the frontrunners of the Brexit movement. He also was a fan of President Trump's campaign and what he stood for, coming over to help him with his campaign. He must be a Russian spy then. The liberal paper, The Guardian, of course, thinks that he is now a person of interest in the FBI's investigation of the Russian interference in the 2016 election. Pretty soon they're going to claim that everyone that ever went to a Trump rally is a Russian spy. But Nigel Farage wasn't fazed one bit by the false accusation. One bit. His response not only shows how ridiculous these accusations are, but also will make the Democrats' heads blow. He first followed Trump's lead and called this exactly what it is, fake news, saying, "This is fake news. I have never been to Russia. I have never had a Russian bank account. I have no Russian political connections whatsoever. This is complete hysterical nonsense." Hysterical nonsense is exactly right. Farage is exactly right that the only source that The Guardian had was that they called the FBI, and they neither confirmed nor denied that he was part of the investigation. The fact that the story was even allowed to run shows that The Guardian belongs right next to Washington Post, New York Times, and most of all, CNN. If simply being connected to Trump means that you are being investigated in this investigation, then it's going to take a long time, and maybe they will even get around to investigating Hillary again, seeing as her and Trump have met on multiple occasions. There could be a connection to Russia there. The next article that I have for you is off of Western Journalism, and it says, "Trump may decide to block Comey's testimony. President Donald Trump will make determination whether he will use his executive authority to block former FBI Director James Comey from testifying to lawmakers next week about the circumstances surrounding his firing." In an interview Friday with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, White House senior advisor Kellyanne Conway confirmed the president will make the determination. "The president will make that decision," Conway said when asked directly if he will invoke his presidential powers to block Comey from testifying. However, Conway indicated that Trump was leaning towards allowing Comey's testimony to take place unimpeded. "We will be watching with the rest of the world when Director Comey testifies," she said. Conway implied that Trump administration had little to worry about in regards to the former FBI director's pending testimony. The last time he testified under oath, the FBI had to scurry to correct that testimony, Conway said. He was off by hundreds of thousands in his count, his sworn testimony count, of the number of emails that Huma Abedin allegedly sent to her husband, Anthony Weiner. Comey said there were hundreds of thousands. It turned out turns out that was off by hundreds of thousands. Conway said only 2 were classified. The president faced fierce criticism from opponents for his May 9th decision to fire Comey. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said the firing of Comey was a big mistake, noting that the FBI has been actively looking into whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia during the 2016 presidential campaign. Sources close to Comey say he is eager to testify in public about the circumstances surrounding his termination. A particular import during the testimony will be a memo written by Comey, which alleges Trump requested the former FBI director to drop his investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Legal experts say Trump has the legal authority to block Comey's testimony, but cautioned that doing so would likely draw an intense backlash. Now, let's get some more articles up here. Okay, this one is off of Newsmax. It says House Democrats warn Trump on blocking Comey's testimony. Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee Friday warned President Donald Trump that blocking James Comey's testimony next week would be seen as an effort to obstruct the truth from both Congress and the American people. In a letter to the White House counsel, Don McGahn, the Democrats said that any such assertion of privilege is almost certainly baseless, particularly given that Mr. Comey is no longer employed by the Trump administration. Trump fired Comey as FBI director last month. He is scheduled to testify Thursday in an open session before the Senate Intelligence Committee. White House spokesman Sean Spicer said Friday that President Trump was considering whether to invoke executive privilege to stop Comey's appearance. We urge you in the strongest possible terms to counsel the president accordingly, said the letter, signed by ranking Democratic Representative John Conyers of Michigan and 6 other committee members from his party. Any assertion of privilege by the president would be seen as an effort to obstruct the truth from both Congress and the American people. Comey is expected to testify on how Trump reportedly pressured him to drop the FBI's investigation into the Russian contacts of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The president also supposedly asked Comey to pledge his loyalty. However, Trump has publicly discussed his conversation with Comey before firing him last month, and legal experts have concluded that the president most likely, as such, has waived his ability to invoke the privilege. It is critical that the American public hears this testimony, the Democrats said in the letter. They also told McGahn that federal court decisions have established that only 2 types of executive privilege seeking to protect communications by the president could apply in Comey's case. However, neither aspect of executive privilege would likely apply, they said. In short, use of the executive privilege to block Mr. Comey's testimony would be a mistake. We caution you that it would fail on the merits, the Democrats wrote. We also warn you that the public would likely, perhaps rightly, view the decision as additional evidence of obstruction of justice. The next article is off of Liberty Writers. It says, Trump just called the Supreme Court today and asked for something inconceivable. Donald Trump has been hard at work trying to get this country back on track after decades of disasters despite the opposition. One of his biggest moves was filling the empty Supreme Court spot with Justice Gorsuch. Since then, Trump has had nothing to do with the court. That was until today. Donald Trump asked the Supreme Court to reinstate his travel ban. Yes, the president's travel ban against Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Yemen is back in play. The president filed 2 emergency applications today with the Supreme Court. Trump's order has been blocked in 2 extremely liberal courts now, despite its only being for 90 days, so they can decide on a better vetting program. It's worth mentioning that one of the courts that keeps impeding Trump, the Ninth Circuit Court, is notoriously liberal and almost always gets overturned by the Supreme Court. Now it's time to see how the court functions without Scalia. It's the court's job to determine if the order is constitutionally legal. Everything was done legally, and the ban is within the executive power. So it seems like smooth sailing ahead. The next article is, this is off of Dennis Michael Lynch. It says, President Putin mocks Megyn Kelly in front of laughing audience. And there is video of this in this one if you want to pull it up to see it. It says, Russian President Vladimir Putin made Megyn Kelly look sort of silly in front of a laughing audience in St. Petersburg after she asked about fake news about Russian involvement in the 2016 election. Megyn Kelly asked about the fingerprints left by Russians. What fingerprints? Putin demanded following Kelly's request. The audience laughed. What are you talking about? He continued with a smile. IP addresses, they can be invented. You know, there are very many specialists that can invent or fake this. You know, a kid of yours can fake an IP address. Your girl that is 3 years old can perpetrate such an attack, said Putin. Kelly went on to demand answers. This is not my allegation. This is the conclusion of the 17 U.S. intelligence agencies and the others that I mentioned. She went on to ask Putin if his aides and Trump ever discussed loosening sanctions on Russia. That's just absurd, what they're saying, he responded. I don't know where these people have come from that distribute this kind of information. This hysteria never seems to stop. Maybe someone has a pill that will make this hysteria stop, Putin responded to laughter from the audience. Kelly looked rusty throughout the entire interview. Her first gig on NBC News fell flat at best. And we'll get some more articles up here. This seems to be working out a little bit better, doing it this way. Okay, the next article here is off of Liberty Headlines, and it says, report, Education Department officials receive secret bonuses despite losing billions. A senior Education Department official who abruptly resigned last month after a dispute with Secretary Betsy DeVos received hundreds of thousands of dollars in off-the-books bonuses over a 7-year period, according to a new report. James Runcie, an Obama administration appointee who served as chief operating officer of the Federal Student Aid Office, received secret 5-figure bonuses each year, while his office gave out billions in improper payments, Judicial Watch reported, citing sources inside the Education Department. While Runcie ran the FSA, the government's $1.4 trillion financial aid program, the office made improper payments for the federal Pell Grant program, which ballooned from $562 million in 2015 to $2.21 billion in 2016. And for the federal district loan, or try that again, for the federal direct loan program, which increased from $1.28 billion in 2015 to $3.86 billion in 2016. These are disbursements that either shouldn't have been made, went to the wrong recipient, were for incorrect amounts, or were not properly documented, Judicial Watch reported, adding that under Runcie's leadership, there was pervasive fraud and corruption at the FSA. The government source told Judicial Watch, a conservative watchdog group, that Runcie's personnel file showed a total of $432,885 in bonuses over a 7-year period, culminating in a $76,000 bonus in 2016. The bonuses do not appear on Runcie's official government salary. The next article is off of Freedom Outpost. It says NSA won't release Clinton Lynch tarmac tape, claims national security. A citizen researcher from Florida is attempting to have the recording of the infamous Bill Clinton Loretta Lynch tarmac tape released to the public, but apparently the National Security Agency claims they won't release it because of national security. The man researching and seeking to have the tape released in Florida, or is a Florida orthodontist. His name's Larry Kawa. You may remember him because Judicial Watch is filing the lawsuit on his behalf to obtain a week's worth of Hillary Clinton's emails regarding Benghazi. It's being reported now that the NSA has declared the recording of the conversation that took place between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch in Phoenix, Arizona on June the 27th of 2016. Judicial Watch filed a Freedom of Information Act request in March of this year to obtain the following. And there's 4 bullet points here. It says, any and all records and or transcripts of a meeting held between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton on June the 28th of 2016. Any and all records of communication sent to or from officials in the Office of Attorney General regarding the meeting held between Attorney General Loretta Lynch, former President Bill Clinton on June the 28th of 2016. Any and all records of communications sent to or from officials in the Office of the Deputy Attorney General regarding the meeting held between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton on June the 28th of 2016, and any and all references to the meeting held between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton contained in day planners, calendars, and schedules in the Office of the Attorney General. This brings us to CAWA. In an article at Big League Politics, Patrick Alley writes, the National Security Agency blocked the release of a purported tape of Bill Clinton and former Attorney General Loretta Lynch's private airplane talk with a rare legal justification used to protect top national security secrets. The NSA block of release of this information, citing one of President Obama's executive orders, undercuts Hillary Clinton's claim that her husband and Lynch had a purely social conversation about grandkids and golf on June the 27th of 2016. 2 weeks before Lynch dropped the Department of Justice investigation into Hillary Clinton's email scandal. Citizen researcher Larry Cowell is pressing the government to release the contents of a taping system that is required to have been installed on Lynch's government airplane. Cowell points to the Tempest system, a NATO-certified system by which the NSA tracks and records sounds that emanate within government structures. General Dynamics installs the recorders in the planes, Kawa told Big League Politics. Lynch could not have uninstalled them if she wanted to. Kawa claims that there are voice over IP recorders that are installed on government airplanes, so there must be a recording. His Freedom of Information Act request was denied, citing national security. So far, we've not really heard anything except that the conversation was about golf and grandchildren, even though Lynch claimed the meeting was regrettable. How is that a matter of national security? We do know that the following meeting, the Justice Department shielded Clinton's Foundation emails, and there is definitely a question of how that meeting may have resulted in the communication of Donald Trump and his advisors at Trump Tower. To respond to your request, NSA would have to confirm or deny the existence of intelligence records on Loretta Lynch, the NSA wrote in their response on November the 14th of 2016. If we were to do so in your case, we would have to do so in every other case. This would enable, for example, terrorists or other adversaries of the, or try that again. This would enable, for example, a terrorist or other adversary to file a Freedom of Information Act request with us in order to determine whether he or she was under surveillance or had evaded it. This, in turn, would allow that individual to better assess whether they could successfully act to damage the national security of the United States. For such reasons, we can neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of the records you requested. Kawa then wrote to the NSA Freedom of Information Act office to challenge them on their denial, and here's their response. Our letter dated 14th of November of 2016 is indeed our final response to your Freedom of Information Act request. It states that the first exemption of the Freedom of Information Act authorizes by executive order properly classified information to be kept secret, and goes on to say that the fact of existence or non-existence of intelligence records on any individual is an appropriately classified matter. The first exemption is often referred to as the B1 exemption, to which you refer. We also provide background information regarding the decision as well as the specific paragraph of EO 13526, which authorizes the type of response, which is often called a GLOMAR response. In addition, we state that the withholding of this information is also authorized by the third exemption under the Freedom of Information Act, as the information is also protected by statute. Lastly, we provide you with instructions on how to appeal this response. Those stories here cannot be true. We cannot have a conversation about golf and grandchildren and that be national security at the same time. It's one or the other. And judging from the Clinton and Lynch's lawlessness, I think it's safe to assume that there was no talk of golf and grandchildren, and I'm betting there was no national security talk either. Rather, there was more than likely criminal scheming taking place. Let's hear the recordings for ourselves, NSA. The next article that I have for you is off Liberty Headlines, and it says, U.S. military stashing, or no, that's wrong. Try this again. New report shows visa overstays are up. There we go. They make the advertisements headlines bigger than the headline for the article. Okay, let's hear what they got to say about these visas. It says illegal immigration has long been a problem in America, but surprisingly large factor in illegal immigration is the problem of legal visitors overstaying their visas. It turns out that visa overstays account for an estimated 40% of all illegal immigration in the United States. And it gives a whole lot of number mumbo jumbo down through this. But I'm going to skip on down here. It says the overstay rate among students and exchange visitors was particularly high at 5.48% out of a total of 1,457,556 visitors. Let's see. The U.S. currently has a biometric and biographic entry requirement that are critical for U.S. security. When a visitor enters the United States through an air or seaport entry, their biometric and biographic information is analyzed across the intelligence and law enforcement database to ensure they are not a threat. Customs and Border Protection officers collect biographic information like name, country of origin, and passport information, while also collecting biometric data such as fingerprints, facial or iris scans, though fingerprints are by far the most common. When they leave, Homeland Security uses biographic information to confirm an individual's identity, though it is struggling to implement a biometric system. This is because it is a costly program to implement, and it requires vast changes to airports, seaports, and land ports across the United States. And then the article goes on from there, talking about with the increased numbers, ICE can locate overstayed visitors within the United States and remove them. Additionally, these extra funds can be used to supply and increase support for the 287G program that enlists the help of state and local authorities in enforcing federal immigration statutes. The Homeland Security Overstay Report indicates that more needs to be done to prevent illegal immigration. By pursuing cost-effective solutions, the U.S. can tame this problem before it grows worse. We'll get some more articles up here. Let's see. Okay, this next one is off of Liberty Headlines. And it says, French president offers refugee status to U.S. liberals. French President Emmanuel Macron is offering offering refuge to American liberals upset at President Donald Trump's decision to the Paris Climate Agreement. In video posted to Twitter, speaking in English, Macron said, "I wish to tell the United States, France believes in you. The world believes in you. I know that you are a great nation. I know your history, your common history. Scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, responsible citizens who were disappointed by the decision of President, I want to say that they will find in France a second homeland. I call them, come and work here with us to work together on concrete solutions for our climate, our environment. I can assure you, France will not give up the fight." Macron also posted a picture to Twitter with the words, "Make our planet great again," on a green and blue background. Macron is a 39-year-old liberal who worked in mergers and acquisitions for the Rothschild Investment Bank in Paris, and as the economy minister to French Socialist Party President Francois Hollande before rebranding himself as an outsider last year and launching a campaign for president. He defeated Populist National Front leader Marine Le Pen in May to become the youngest ever president of France. And maybe because of his youth that Macron is not aware that the specter of a young Frenchman calling out the President of the United States speaking English with a French accent may invite more ridicule from Americans than gratitude. If you're wondering how to get into France, you can either be a Syrian jihad or an American climate scientist, newspaper columnist, and talk radio guest host Mark Stein said on the Rush Limbaugh show on Friday afternoon, before noting that France would likely require more paperwork from the American climate scientists than from the jihadi. As for President Trump himself, the Washington Post reported Friday that Trump's irritation with Macron disrespecting him at their first meeting may have, in fact, helped seal his decision on withdrawal from the Paris Accord. It occurred in Brussels, Belgium on May the 26th when the new French president approached the line of world leaders with Trump in the middle, but veered off to his right, ignoring Trump to shake German Chancellor Angela Merkel's hand first, and then the hand of NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, only to then finally come to Trump, who clasped Macron's hand tightly and pulled the slender Macron toward him forcefully while shaking his hand vigorously, breaking out into what a huge smile. Not at Macron, but toward the cameras that he saw were pointed toward them. At an earlier private meeting between Macron and Trump, the two had shaken hands with both gripping tightly and grimacing for the camera in what some media organizations interpreted as an alpha male showdown. In what was likely the best or probably the most memorable line from the president's energetic address from the Rose Garden on Thursday, in which he laid out the strong case for exiting the Paris Agreement, he said, "I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris." The next article is off of Newsmax. It says, Eric Trump says liberal media continues to get it wrong. President Donald Trump's son Eric chastised the liberal media for upcoming books set for publication about the 2016 presidential election, saying reporters continue to get it wrong, just as their predictions were for the president's campaign, and said his father was well on his way to making America great again. Trump made the statement in a foreword to former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich's upcoming book, Understanding Trump, which is due for a June 13th release, the Washington Examiner reported on Friday. Understanding Trump is an inside look into possibly the greatest campaign of all time. My father gained the most primary votes of any GOP candidate in the history of the nation. He shattered registration records across the country. He turned traditional debates into must-see TV. At a time when most would hold fast to a lifestyle that had become the epitome of the American dream, my father chose to bring that dream back to those it had eluded for so long, he wrote. Many books will be written by the very people who get it wrong, and quite frankly, who continue to get it wrong. But this book will stand apart because Newt was one of the few who got it right. He is a friend, and he was there from the beginning, he continued. Trump explained Gingrich was able to understand and the disconnect lawmakers in Washington and the media have with Americans who have felt left out in modern politics. He understood how disconnected career politicians and the mainstream media had become for so many Americans seeking the American dream, an ideal that seemed unattainable to many for the first time in history, Eric Trump wrote. He ended the remarks by writing that the president's policies were already having a positive effect. As to my father, there is no greater man. He is compassionate and caring. He is brilliant and strong. More than anything, he deeply loves our great country. He ran on one promise, to make America great again, and he is already well on his way, he wrote. The next article is off of Newsmax. It says, Conway's husband withdraws name from U.S. Justice Department post. New York lawyer George Conway, who had been expected to be nominated to head the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Division, has withdrawn from consideration. Conway, the husband of White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, said in a statement received on Friday that he was profoundly grateful to the president and to the Attorney General for selecting him to serve in the Justice Department. However, he said he had concluded that this is not the right time for me to leave the private sector. Conway had notified the White House of his decision on Wednesday in a letter, according to a person familiar with the matter. A Justice Department spokesman declined to comment on the withdrawal. We don't comment on personal matters, the spokesman, Ian Pryor, said in a statement. Conway is a partner at the prestigious law firm Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz. He joins a number of potential hires who have withdrawn from consideration for posts in the Trump administration in recent weeks. The final article that I have for you this morning is off of Newsmax, and it says, Trump leveraging Jerusalem embassy issue. Donald Trump's presidency so far has followed a pattern of disruption. He snubs European allies. He tweets in atrocious grammar. He pulls out of international agreements. He shakes things up. But in one important respect, Trump's presidency appears entirely conventional. That is in the Middle East. Like his recent predecessors, he promised during the presidential campaign to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, and like his predecessors, he violated that promise now that he is in office. So why did Trump do it? To maximize the chances of successfully negotiating a deal between Israel and Palestinians, according to a White House statement issued Thursday on his decision to sign a waiver of the Jerusalem Embassy Act that would have set in motion the process for the U.S. moving its embassy to Israel's capital. It doesn't get much more conventional than that. What modern president hasn't tried to maximize the chances of that ever elusive peace deal? It would be easy to end the story there, but in this case, Trump has left open the possibility that he will eventually keep his campaign promise, as he has repeatedly stated his intention to move the embassy. The question is not if that move happens, but only when. The White House statement also said. With Trump, it's never clear what promises, if any, he intends to keep. This is the same guy who campaigned on resetting ties with Russia, only to reach out to Russia's traditional rival, China, in his first weeks in office. During the transition, he signaled he might recognize the sovereignty of Taiwan. Then, of course, he backtracked on that as well. The White House officials tell me that Trump, for now, believes he can use the embassy issue as leverage. Normally, this would mean holding out the prospect of moving the embassy as a carrot to the Israelis in exchange for concessions on settlements. In this case, however, it's a little different. Trump is using the prospect of an embassy move as a stick with Israel's Arab neighbors. It has been reported that Jordan's King Abdullah, whose country enjoys a peace treaty with Israel, warned Trump that an embassy move would mean riots. This is a familiar refrain for anyone who has followed the issue. The vaunted Arab street will rise up if America designs to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Let's leave aside for a moment that this provides a heckler's veto on U.S. policy toward the world's only Jewish state. In another sense, it means that Trump is calling a long-standing bluff. If U.S. recognition is so bad for you, then help me help you avoid that for the time being. One White House official told me Trump is eyeing current decisions between Israel, Jordan, and Egypt in this respect. This would allow Israel to sell natural gas to its neighbors and pave the way for more agreements to allow Jordanian and Egyptian nationals to work in Israel, as well as deals to share water resources. Most important, though, Trump is banking on Jordan and Egypt to pressure the Palestinians in the peace negotiations his advisors would like to see restarted. So far, there are signs that new peace process is in the works. The Palestinians are said, for example, to have dropped their preconditions for negotiations with Israel. That alone is progress. Under Obama, the Palestinians demanded at first a settlement freeze, and then later the return of Palestinian prisoners, some of whom had killed U.S. citizens. All that said, there are many obstacles at the moment for getting peace talks going. To start, the current Israeli government is comprised of political parties that range from skeptical to hostile on the idea of land for peace. Even if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wanted a final status solution to the conflict, it's likely his government could deliver it. Then there's Mohammed Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority. He hasn't stood for an election since 2005. His political party was ousted from Gaza a decade ago, and he has yet to make any concessions on Trump's request to end incitement to violence against the Jews, to say nothing of the authorities' program to pay off the families, suicide bombers, and other terrorists. This is why the Middle East experts say the time isn't right to push for a final deal that would create a Palestinian state out of the territory Israel won in 1967 war. Those same experts would caution Trump against moving the embassy or otherwise signaling U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Given Trump's defiance of the experts on the peace process, it's entirely plausible that sometime in the future he will also defy them on Jerusalem. You could say it would follow a pattern. That's all I have for you this morning. So if you like what I'm doing here, please give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so other people get to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that yet, and that way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.